Hey everybody, welcome aboard to Special Report Online. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. It's a great forum to continue the conversation with the panel, a little bit more relaxed. You can weigh in, ask us questions, really whatever you want to do. Let's bring in the panel. Charles Hurt, political columnist for the Washington Times. David Catanese, senior politics writer for U.S. News and World Report. And of course, syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, we were just talking about the Trump campaign and where things are in the first panel. Here is Rush Limbaugh on the status of this campaign and the passivity of Donald Trump.
For the acknowledged frontrunner to be on a roll, you would think that there would be an expanding number of people voting for Trump, but it's held steady at 35-37, and I'm wondering why there hasn't been an effort to grow the base, or maybe the effort has been that they just think it's going to happen as more wins were chalked up and more momentum was developed. But Trump hasn't won anything in a month now, right?
Yeah, it's the same message that Chris Stirewalt had in his morning note, in which he said nothing in Wisconsin's results showed any change in Trump's numbers or trajectory. What changed is not Trump or his voters, but rather the willingness of the rest of the party to coalesce behind another candidate and engage in strategic voting, in this case for Cruz. In a thinned field, Trump is facing harsher math. Buy that, Dave?
A little bit, although if you look at the numbers, and he got 49% in Massachusetts. He got 40% in a bunch of states. He's never hit 50, and I think that is going to be the bar for him in New York because it is his home state. You already had people coming back and forth, operatives, Republican operatives saying he'll never get there and he won't, he'll never get to the 50%, or the Trump campaign saying they definitely will. I think that is going to be the test for him, but I think it also will be a question of how much time does Ted Cruz and John Kasich spend in New York? Do they feel like they can peel off some delegates in some of the upper portions of the state, more rural areas, target delegates? Because a week after New York, you've got another series of big northeastern primaries, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Pennsylvania being a big one, and they got to beat Trump somewhere to stop him. Cruz has this Wisconsin win, but that doesn't take him through the entire month. He's got to win somewhere else.
Yeah. Charlie, you look at the delegates, and Trump currently has 743, Cruz 517, Rubio, he still has 171, and Kasich has 143. If you are the most generous you can be with the rest of the map. He's still about 30 or 40 short of 1237. And this is being generous in places even like Montana and other places.
Yeah, I think that the big thing takeaway from last night was that it is going to be short of something extraordinary. It's going to be impossible for Donald Trump to get the 1237. But we've also been hearing for at least a month now, weeks certainly, from Republicans, well-placed Republicans, from delegates who say it really would be a problem if he comes in with a strong plurality and he's within 20 points, 30 points of the 1237, that it would be a very bad perception to have him denied the nomination because he's just a few dozen delegates short.
Yeah, but it happens to be the majority in the party and the rules that the RNC has.
Sure, and I think that to some degree, I feel like a lot of Republicans are kind of hiding behind talking about all these rules, talking about the delegate counts, and talking about the brokered convention and everything. And the problem there is that it allows them to fail to recognize the real problem they have. And the real problem they have is that there's a great disconnect between them and their voters. When Donald Trump came out talking about illegal immigration and talking about things like trade, they mocked him, they laughed at him, and they ridiculed his issues. He was dead right about all of those things. And
I give you this on the issues. I give you all of that. But you also have to concede that there's a large part of the party that is not behind Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
And so when you look in Cleveland at those people, they have a say too. on the floor.
Absolutely, and that's why I think that this errand that Ted Cruz is on, very much at the behest of the establishment, or at least the establishment is applauding, which is hilarious if you have observed his career here in Washington.
8 months ago.
And you're going to get there. You can make the same case, as you said, I think, David. You can make the same case about Cruz that you can make about Donald Trump. And so what I think that Ted Cruz is very much doing is he is managing to deny the outsider Ted Cruz from getting the nomination. But Ted Cruz isn't going to get it either if it goes to the contested part of the convention.
All right, Nicholas, D.C. writes, I'm a supporter of neither Trump nor Cruz, but I think it is absolutely mashugana that there is a shadow primary for delegates in progress and an assortment of archaic and convoluted rules and party politics that can essentially cancel people's votes. I mean, he's throwing the mashugana in there.
Well, you know, it's an obscure Latin phrase, so he obviously is a well-schooled person. Look, I think it's either going to be Trump or Cruz. It is unimaginable they're going to parachute in some kind of unicorn who's never been in a race. I think it's also unimaginable that you're going to reach down to number 3 to a guy who will have lost 55 of the 56 contests, meaning Governor Kasich. I just think that it'll be seen as illegitimate. Yes, you can say Abraham Lincoln was trailing as he went in, but that was 1860. It's been a while, and the reforms of the post-1968 reforms have indicated that you have to give a hell of a lot more weight to what the voters say. But I think if Trump comes in within just an eyelash of the magic number, it's going to be hard to say no. I think the key number is also going to be, what's the gap between Trump and Cruz? If it's 100 or 200 delegates, even 300, Cruz will have a legitimate claim to being up there, to being rightfully in the run. And when you go to a second or a third ballot, that wouldn't be true for Kasich. Wouldn't be true for anybody outside.
John Kasich, this is an interesting thing. We talk about how all these states have different laws about how they treat their delegates.
Right.
In Ohio, the state of Ohio, if you get to the convention and John Kasich, or prior to the convention, John Kasich decides to drop out, by Ohio state law, those delegates are then bound to the second place finisher in Ohio, which is Donald Trump.
Wow.
So that is 143 delegates. That could potentially be the difference in the nomination. That's Ohio state law. Other states have different laws. This is why he's staying in this race, because automatically they go to Donald Trump.
And I don't understand why Cruz is urging Kasich to drop out. Perhaps later.
I don't think he knows that rule.
But that's number one. But I'll give you a second example of why it makes no sense. As we discussed here just in the break, the New York rules are that if you get 50% of the vote, you get all the delegates, every single one. If it's under 50%, you get a bunch of delegates, and then you go to all the districts. Winner of the district gets 2 delegates, and the second gets 1. That's a huge difference. Now, with Kasich in there, the chances of Trump getting under 50% are far greater than they are on a one-on-one. If it's a one-on-one, either Trump or Cruz is going to get 50%. That's the math. And it's not going to be Cruz. So I do not understand why he's urging Kasich to leave. He needs him. That's his lifeline. Perhaps later on, but not now.
In Pennsylvania, for example, Kasich is in second place currently, and there, 54 of their delegates are unbound.
Right.
They are free agents when they get to Cleveland.
And there's sort of a shadow campaign going on beyond these primaries. State conventions where the actual selection of the delegates occur. You're going to see it in Iowa happen this weekend. You're going to see it throughout the states through April into May, where you're picking who these delegates are. I've done some reporting. John Kasich has paid staffers, former Marco Rubio staffers, in South Carolina, going through the Republican Party there and seeing who could be loyal to us, so that if Trump doesn't win on the first ballot, these would be Kasich delegates. And this is what's going on everywhere. And I don't know if Trump has the operation. I know Ted Cruz does. He's doing the same thing. Kasich has an operation in some of the states where he's trying to. Does Donald Trump have that operation this really technical operation to know the individual state rules. The state rule that you just read out of Ohio, that's a striking rule. I haven't even heard that anywhere.
Yeah.
Does the Trump campaign understand the level of detail of the rules in each state? Because that's what it would come down to. But I also think, going back to the previous point, imagine if Donald Trump is a popular vote victor in all this. He's won 30-some states, millions of more votes than Ted Cruz, and they go to the convention and they play by their own rules, and it's not him. You are going to have such revolt. I know they say these are the rules. I've looked at a lot of these rules. I've written about them. But for Trump supporters, that is the type of move that I think would make them stay home.
Okay, well, let's, on that point, Roger Stone is no longer with the Trump campaign. However, he speaks a lot about the Trump campaign, supports the Trump campaign, is on some places talking about the Trump campaign. Here's what he said about Cleveland and delegates.
Which is why I have urged Trump supporters, come to Cleveland. We're going to have protests, demonstrations. We will disclose the hotels and the room numbers of those delegates who are directly involved in the steal.
What?
The room number?
How does he know the room number?
Hotels I can understand. You carry a placard outside. What are you going to do at the room
Or meet
number?
in the lobby, maybe?
I mean,
But-
what?
I mean, is
You
that
gonna do
not
a-
like a mob?
That's
It'd be really a shame if your little convention in Cleveland had a couple of problems. You know what I'm saying?
This is the problem, the aura around the Trump campaign, though. I mean,
But listen, to be fair, he's no longer in the Trump campaign. He was essentially fired. Formally, but he does speak about the Trump campaign.
But I do think that, along with what you were saying, Donald Trump, he has hired people to do this sort of thing. But Ted Cruz has been doing it since before the first contest. I mean, he's very good at this kind of thing. And it is the difference between a Ted Cruz and a Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't care about these sorts of specifics, and it's why he's been very appealing to a lot of people, talking about, in very simple terms, about what to do about long festering problems that nobody's done anything about. And but obviously Ted Cruz, and I think that if it gets to this, and we are talking about all these arcane rules about what happens to New York, all this kind of stuff, it is going to be disastrous for
But listen, if Ted Cruz, and you can also do this, I often don't point people to other news organizations to do things, but we're online, so might as well. But the 538 blog, you can do your own math and kind of where the experts are on the delegates for each state and where you think he's going to, either Trump or Cruz is going to get out of each state, and it takes you up and adds up towards 1237. I've done it like 7 times because I'm addicted to it. And each time I come up short with Trump. There was one time I got over the edge, but it was very, very close to 1237. Cruz can get to 900.
Right.
Maybe 950. If you add up Rubio at 171 and Kasich at 143, you suddenly have a powerful block.
I think it can be done mathematically. I do think that David has a strong point about the legitimacy, but I don't think it'll depend on how many states you won or what the popular vote was. It's like saying you don't win the World Series if you win 4 games. Instead, you count up the total number of runs. There are rules, and the rules are delegates. If the delegate spread between Trump and Cruz is a fairly narrow one, then I think you could say that the two of them have sort of equal legitimate right to end up with a nomination. But if it's a huge gap, then I think people will not stand for it.
Cruz is now saying we're going to get to 1237. Either before Cleveland or at the convention.
Yeah, he's not going to get there before
He won't
Cleveland.
get
There's
there.
no way. And frankly, to that point, then why have primaries? Get rid of the voting and just elect delegates. If that's if the vote doesn't matter, if it doesn't matter how many runs you run up in Wisconsin or Nebraska or New York, forget why are we spending all this time having these big nights with all these people going out standing in line for hours. Just have the state party conventions and have the candidates find delegates and try to get them elected and go. Well, I don't understand. I mean, that's what my question would be. If I'm on the losing end of this, then forget the whole primary system.
Because it's a republic and not a democracy.
Well, but I think having people vote and the person with the most votes at the end doesn't get it. And if it's a lot, if it's millions, or even a million's a lot of people. And if that's not the winner because of a bunch of delegates in Cleveland, then why have an open primary in New Hampshire? Forget it.
Why do we have an electoral college?
Well, I think that's
why do we have a Senate that's completely unbalanced? Wyoming and New
I think
York
those are all good
equal
questions.
All right, we're going to start it all over right here at the panel. We're just ripping the whole thing
Going
down
back to Hamilton.
and just going back.
We're going to get into Hamilton?
And of course, if pluralities don't matter, then we would have never had Bill Clinton as president because he never won a majority. He won. The only way he won both times is because of a third party.
But at the convention, he got the majority of Democratic delegates.
Yes, and that's a good point.
And, you know, Donald Trump says, 1237, this is an arbitrary number. No, it's not arbitrary at all. It is the majority of the delegates in the Republican Party. So no matter how you get there, if you have to wheel and deal and art of the deal and strike some, thing and you get 100 here,
But the delegates are arbitrarily set by the party. It's arbitrarily set that Wisconsin gets 42 delegates by the Republican Party. Why isn't it 70? Why is that is based on the Republican Party formula.
It is their party.
It is their party. They can set the rules as they want. I'm just saying the legitimacy factor will be one that I think will destroy the party for the general election if it's someone that doesn't, in the end, have the most votes through primary system.
Let me take some comments, and this one takes precedent, really, because it's from my mom. Pat Bear says, what do you think about Trump, Cruz coming together eventually? Cruz, being the younger, would be expected to be the VP. He may not go for that. However, this would end the contested convention. Well, Mom, I tell you, I looked at the exit polls, and 7 out of 10 said they would never vote for Trump from the Cruz people. 6 out of 10 said they would never vote for Cruz in the Trump people. And Lion Ted and whatever else, I'm not sure it's going to happen. It's not exactly like Ronald Reagan and H.W. Bush.
Right.
It feels a little different. But to your point, that would solve it. I just don't think they're going to do it.
What Cruz said, I'm not in the habit of supporting somebody who attacks my wife, almost makes it a matter of principle, that he's got to choose between Heidi and Trump, and it ain't going to be Trump. So, I mean, I think he sort of set himself up, and I'm sure he was sincere, that this is something he cannot do. And you say that, the Republicans are committing suicide if they choose the wrong guy, the guy who doesn't get the most votes. I don't see a way for them to unite at the end. I was at the 1980 convention when Jimmy Carter and Ted Kennedy had this terrible fight, and the Kennedy people were so angry that at the very end, the Carter people had to beg Ted Kennedy to go on the stage and hold up his hand. But Carter had to run around the stage trying to get Kennedy to shake his hand, which he wouldn't.
Can you imagine Trump lifting up Cruz's hand at a convention?
It might be like Raul
July?
Castro and Obama.
But if you can't, I cannot see that happening. So that means they've already committed suicide. I mean, they're going to leave divided. I can't see how they would do that otherwise.
Do we have a way to listen in to Donald Trump? Can we do that? All right. Well, tell me when we can. I just want to see what he's saying. It's the first comments. And we're online, but we might as well stream some of it if we can. If you're not here with us, obviously Greta's carrying it live, and you can tune in to Greta. And leave us on so that we can give you play-by-play. It's sort of like that, what was that theater?
Oh, yeah.
Space, science, yes.
Science
but
fiction
you just see the shadow of the back of their head?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they would provide the dialogue.
We can't do that currently. Oh, here we go.
We don't win on health care. We don't win on anything. We are going to start winning again, folks. So in coming up, I said to myself and I said to some of the people when we were in the car, I said, I'm self-funding my campaign. I'm putting my own money in, right? And all of these people that are running for office, they're like off the trough. They take money in from all the special interests where they can't make proper transactions for you. And that's going to stop.
I think we missed the Wisconsin part because now he's on his traditional stump speech, and people are saying we hear a lot of him. Let's not hear it on the online show. But I wanted to hear what he said about Wisconsin, but we'll see if anybody puts that in. Maybe he doesn't talk about it at all, Charlie.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I think it's hard to overestimate the power of is that line right there about how he's funding his own campaign. I think that bought him an amount of credibility all along that is hard for any politician to come by. But there was a question at one of the debates, I can't remember which one, that he never did completely answer. And it was, what are you going to do in the general election if you're the nominee? Are you going to start raising, are you going to collect money, donations at that time? And he didn't answer it, and there are, I mean, thinking it through, there are some Trumpian ways of answering that in a winning way, but he chose instead to not answer it at all. But it is an interesting question. I mean, he's made such a big deal out of that, about the importance of how it's given him this absolute, you know, credibility with voters, and he's unbought. And it'd be interesting to know, you know, what his thoughts are on that.
Yeah. Now, this is how Dan Balls writes about New York, and I thought it's 50+1, and he gets all 95. He says, for starters, the state's 95 delegates will be awarded proportionally rather than on a winner-take-all basis. Beyond that, 81 of those delegates are distributed on the basis of the results in the state's 27 congressional districts. Trump could gain 14 delegates if he wins more than 50% of the statewide vote. Otherwise, he will share those delegates with any rival who tops 20%. In any congressional district where he falls short of 50%, even if he has the plurality of votes, he will give up one of the 3 delegates awarded in each of those districts. If he runs second to any district, he would pick up just 1. Now,
that's the hybrid thing.
I don't think that's...
Well, that's what I read from the RNC rule book today. That's what was, if you get 50% plus 1,
you get all 95.
You can get all 95 delegates. Now, if you are 1 vote short, then it goes into this system by congressional district, where you can win 3, or 3 for the winner and 2 for second.
Maybe it's possible statistically that if you get 50% plus 1, you are winning in those congressional districts.
Yeah, but it's also contingent upon somebody else getting 20%, and if nobody gets that 20%, if there is if you don't
have to get at least 20%, or you can't. So Kasich gets 19% in New York, he can't win any of the delegates.
Trump did not mention the primary at all last night, from what we could tell. Let's turn quickly, because people want to hear about the Democrats. Is there a chance, any chance, even a Dumb and Dumber, so you're saying there's a chance, that Bernie Sanders can somehow continue this winning streak? Dave.
Yes, I think there is a chance that he could win New York. I think he is an underdog.
There's the delegates right now, and you add the super delegates in there. If you take those out, the difference between Clinton and Sanders is actually less than the difference between Trump and Cruz.
Look, the polling is, he is not down by that much. There's been some various polling. One poll showed him down 12, one showed him down single digits in New York. New York should be her state, just like it should be Donald Trump's state. But he's got, this is, look, 2 weeks is a long amount of time in politics, and frankly, there's a lot of polling that showed him only up by single digits in Wisconsin. He won by 13. So, you know, I think he will make New York competitive, but I think he needs to beat her. Coming close is not going to be good enough. I think he needs to win in New York. I think he needs to be clear, and then he can go on to Pennsylvania. I mean, frankly, this is the only way he becomes a nominee. He's got to start beating her everywhere. And even then, the Clinton people would say he can't catch her, right? Because he never can beat her by the, like last night, as you pointed out during the show, he only netted 11 delegates. He creamed her by 13 points, but she still got a big chunk of delegates. That's the way the Democratic system is set up, which we could talk about reforming their system. You know, it sort of protects someone who wins early.
Let's just play this soundbite before we wrap up here. This is the Sanders campaign manager and Hillary Clinton today.
Don't destroy the Democratic Party to satisfy the Secretary's ambitions to become President of the United States?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just ludicrous on the face of it. You know, I have been campaigning for Democrats, fundraising for Democrats, recruiting Democrats to run and win for a really long time, I think about 40 years. And Senator Sanders, by his own admission, has never even been a Democrat.
So she's got her hands full. Some Democrats I talked to say, you know what, this is really good because it is putting Hillary Clinton through the paces. And she is getting better and stronger and a better campaigner. She's not that good on the stump. She's not a great campaigner. We all know that. But they say she's getting better. Is that a fair assessment?
I think so. Well, I don't know if she's getting better, but it's certainly good. It's always good for a candidate, I think, to go through this. Bernie can keep winning races. Senator Sanders can keep winning races, but he's not going to win the thing outright because, you know, in 2008, President Obama, or then Senator Obama, was such an inspiring figure that appealed to a broad cross-section of people, every demographic, once they realized he was for real, electorally speaking anyway. And so it was very easy for all those superdelegates to give up and desert her and go over to his side. That's what Bernie Sanders would need. And the superdelegates are not going to, this is not a step up for them. This is, at best, a lateral move to Bernie Sanders.
All right, so all the talk is about Cleveland. But as Bernie Sanders racks up these wins, Philadelphia is not going to be a walk in the park. And if he comes close, let's say he continues to have wins but doesn't get the nomination, what does Bernie Sanders want? What does he want from Hillary Clinton? What does he want from the Democratic Party? What does he want from Philadelphia?
I think two things. He wants to make a primetime speech, and I think he wants to be the person who has the most influence, if not the one who names the number two. Because that's the future of the party. If she wins, the number two's in there, say for 8 years, it becomes the presumptive nominee when she's gone. That's the future of the party. If you're of his age, you honeymoon in the Soviet Union. I can't get over that.
It might be one of your favorite talking points in recent years.
I can't get over it.
Yeah.
And Lindsay said, you know, and he never returned, which is sort of the best part. But he's such an unusual guy. As Hillary says, he hasn't been a Democrat till now. Imagine, he never imagined he'd get to where he is. He like Donald Trump, who never imagined he'd be where he is. Now he's in a position to make history. He's been out there in the field for 25, 26 years, has left not a trace on the history of the United States. Had he not run, you know, he would have gotten a 3-line obituary one day. Let's hope it's not soon. You know, but now he's going to have a big place in history. And for him, you know, socialists, they think very long into the future. And that would be what I'd ask.
Last thing, and if that happens, if he has a greater influence on the platform, on the planks in the party platform, on Hillary Clinton's choice for number two, for a general election, one would think that's a bad thing because she gets pulled to the left and can't make her traditional move to the middle on a number of issues.
I think so, but we've seen the Clintons being able to pivot before back to the center. She might not be able to do it as well as her husband did, but she's going to do it. Look, I think she needs his energy. She needs him out there validating her to get all those young people that she's losing now to come out for a general election against Trump or Cruz or whoever it might be. And frankly, she might be the benefit of a shattered Republican Party, given what we were talking about. I mean, that might be her biggest. I think she's a weak candidate and is beatable, but what is going on the Republican side and all these scenarios that we're hashing out into July and how they reconcile, that could be Hillary Clinton's biggest gift.
It all comes down to California.
I would like to correct that one thing Charles said about Bernie Sanders. He does have something that he can be remembered for. He reformed the VA administration. Thank goodness for that.
I'll take the footnote. I'll put it onto his obit.
All right. Thank you, everybody. That's been Special Report Online tonight. We'll see you next week. Control Room, a little goodbye.